And thank you for staying with us. Time now for BTH. So today we have a very quick conversation on food security. Yesterday we had a general conversation on your security. This morning, how about we think about our stomachs? So here's what the Agric Minister had to say. But before we go to see or listen to that video, yesterday was African Union, and they've been telling us what kind of policies and, plans they're trying to roll out to at least curb the food shortage crisis in Africa. But then again, this is a global challenge, as the UN has been warning that prices of food has been going up. And surprisingly, they've still attributed it to Ukraine and Russia war. They've attributed it to climate change and so many other things. We will concern ourselves this morning about what we're supposed to do internally. We'll be conversating with Dr. Charles Nyaba, Programs Officer, Peasant Farmers Association. And then we'll also go to the University of Ghana Economics Department and talk to Mr. David Tano. He's a development economist. So do stay, but do you feel secure? Do you even know what you have to do? The other time, Rosalind was saying that shall we start farming at the backyards of our homes? Today, by the end of the conversation, it'll be a quick one, but we'll get to learn a thing or two and understand it. So do stay.
Last year, if you compare the amount of fertilizer distributed to our farmers, you will see a sharp drop this year. From January to May, the amounts that have been distributed are nothing to write home about.
Ghana's Agric Minister, Dr. Efriye Akoto, admitting that the country is facing acute fertilizer shortage this year. After several months of farmers warning of the lack of fertilizers and thereby raising the cost of the few available, Dr. Akoto, at a meeting with producers and importers of fertilizer, has said the quantity supplied this year are nothing to write home about.
There's an acute shortage of agrochemicals generally, and fertilizers in particular, because of what is happening in Ukraine and Russia, and the sanctions and all those things breaking the supply chains and making global trading very, very difficult. If you compare at the end of May for the last 4 years, the amount of fertilizer distributed to our farmers, you will see a sharp drop this year. We reckon that the demand for fertilizer in Ghana is about 600,000 metric tons. And so far this year, we haven't even done 100,000 metric tons. So we are way, way off.
Dr. Efriye Akoto, in admitting the difficulties, explained that organic fertilizer might probably be the game changer now, since organic agriculture itself even fetches high premium on the international market.
Farmers only last year at the beginning of the season were paying 120 cedis per bag of 50 kilograms. Now you'll be lucky to have it for 400 cedis if you even see a bag. And we find that the solution lies in organic fertilizer. I mean, organic agriculture has taken a huge premium on the international markets, sometimes as high as 50% price increase if a product is produced organically. So, and we have a lot of fauna, flora around, and a lot of garbage that we throw away, which could be used for fertilization. I've seen Zoom Lion, for instance. We've been having a trading.
Welcome back to the studio. And what do they even mean by what is organic fertilizer? I don't understand. But this morning, as I said, we'll be talking to Dr. Charles Nyaba, Executive Director of Peasant Farmers Association. And I'm also joined via Zoom by Mr. David Tano, Development Economist, University of Ghana Economics Department. So did you know that in Ethiopia and Somalia and even in Kenya, at least food crisis or extreme hunger has doubled from 10 million to 23 million recently? I mean, today, if you go there today, and at least in 48 seconds, one person is likely to die from extreme hunger. Imagine this is happening in Ghana, and I hope that we don't get there. Now, to better understand it, Doc, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Okay, so just help us understand what the UN has been saying, that, okay, prices of food is going to be going up because of the challenges that we know. They mentioned Ukraine, they mentioned climate change and a few others. Before we come to Ghana, what we're supposed to be doing?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me say good morning to the listeners. The issue of food crisis this year, to me, we saw this coming. If you were following our discussion in 2021, when we keep knocking at the doors of the ministry, telling them some of the challenges the farmers were facing, which has to do with the impact of COVID, and then the high freight charges, and then the climate change. I think we missed several calls to that. And then we also sound a warning that if measures were not put in place, we are likely to face what we are facing now.
Okay.
Now, this is not peculiar to only Ghana. So even if you look at the sub-region, I think there are instances where some of our neighbors even have to depend on us for food. So what we are experiencing now is as a result of what happened in 2021. Now, those factors, there are some that have even compounded this year. We keep talking about Russia, Ukraine. To me, I think what we are facing now is more internal than Russia, Ukraine.
Okay.
We are actually going to feel the impact of Russia, Ukraine in 2023. This is because last year, 2021, there was no Russia, Ukraine. Yet we had difficulties in access to fertilizer. Rains came in very late. We depend so much, almost everything in the West. Inputs like agrochemicals. If I talk of agrochemicals, they are there in types. So you, those who are not familiar, I may have to explain. If you talk of agrochemicals, it comprises of herbicides, pesticides, talk about various types of weedicides. We also talk of even fertilizer.
Okay.
It's classified as agrochemicals. So in the past, we've been depending on the West for all this to produce. You know, in recent time, nobody wants to go to the farm and then you'll be using hoe and cutlasses. So we use some of these herbicides to control the weeds.
Okay.
And prices last year went so high because some companies have to shut down production because of COVID. And then because of high freight charges, the cost went high. Now for fertilizer, last year, the major problem has to do with our own government failure to pay companies that they contracted to supply fertilizer in 2020. So those companies refused to supply last year. So those things happen. Now, you look at the various agroecological zones in Ghana, and the rains were not reliable at all. It started from the southern Ghana, the rains didn't come on time. The middle belt, it came, and then in the midway around July, August, it stopped. In the northern Ghana, the same thing. Then later part of September last year for northern Ghana, when the rain started coming, then there was flooding. So all these factors came together to actually reduce our supply. So the high food prices we are recording now has to do with supply challenges.
Okay.
Supply is far lower than demand. So that's what we are experiencing now.
Okay.
Now, this is also happening in the sub-regions. When you go to Mali, you go to Burkina, you go to Togo, you go to Nigeria, the same factors that we are facing, they also face that. And because we are interdependent in some of the food commodities, once it's hit one part of the country, it hits the other countries.
Okay, okay, understandable. Hi, Mr. Eduhene, if you're via Zoom. Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Right, thanks for joining us. So, Dr. Nyaba averts to the claim that our challenge to food security or food challenge here in Ghana is more internal than what the institutions such as UN and African Union have been saying, especially relating it to the Ukraine and Russia war. Is this true?
Yes, I tend to side with him on that because issues of food security or food sufficiency should be an internal policies geared towards having enough food on our tables in Ghana than to rely on external factors which may have just an infinitesimal value on food supply chain. So if you look at from Dr. Nyabe's point, I tend to side with him simply because most of the agricultural practices in Ghana are quite traditional based, subsistence based, and we tend to rely on nature compared to relying on technology. So most of them are quite internal issues compared to when we tend to blame external factors in terms of food supply in Ghana.
Okay, I'll stay with you before I come back to Dr. Nyaba, but in any case that Russia-Ukraine can be, linked to our food shortage, how can we draw the line? I really never understand it that, okay, is it that before we get food in Ghana, we fly to Russia or Ukraine? Please draw the line and let me understand it. Yeah.
All right, so Russia-Ukraine, well, we will say that in terms of relying on external sources, for most of our agricultural inputs, like fertilizer. If you look at in 2020, Russia exported an estimated value of 190 million dollars of fertilizer to Ghana. It tells you how huge those products are. And we tend to also depend on Russia for wheat, which is valued around $48.6 million. So yes, we may tend to depend on external sources, but sometimes some of these things we cannot entirely put them on the external factors compared to what we can do within our domestic economy in terms of food supply. So yes, external factors may play a role, but not that very huge compared to what we can do internally to be food secure.
Okay. Thanks for that clarity, Dr. Nyaba. So you were teaching us some of the internal factors that have contributed, but you mentioned climate change. Yeah. But how can government have control over climate change?
Yeah. So the point I was making, let me make this clear again.
Okay.
If I say it was basically internal factors, what I try to draw the lines is that we are talking about currently.
Yeah.
Now, what will happen to food supply next year depends on decisions we take today.
Okay.
So what we have currently is based on decisions we took in 2021. And in 2021, there was no Russia-Ukraine war.
Absolutely.
So that's the point I want to make. Yeah. Now, when you come to this year, those commodities that we depend on import, like rice, we are not self-sufficient in rice, cooking oil, wheat, just like my colleague mentioned, those ones, then we can attribute them to the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, one of the things that I can link our internal policies to climate change and then the Russia-Ukraine war has to do with, for the past 10 years, we have been calling that we need to actually focus on our internal agriculture policies that addresses climate change. Because if you look at what we do, we depend so much on chemical fertilizer, which has serious implications on the soil fertility.
Okay.
We depend so much on pesticides. Okay. Pesticides has serious implications on the biodiversity and then the health of food that we eat and even the water. We depend so much on using heavy machinery to destroy all the vegetation and plant, monocropping. It has serious implications on rainfall and what have you. So those are the factors that are contributing to climate change. And then climate change is also contributing to food production at the same time. You know, when I started, I mentioned about the rainfall pattern not being stable in the various agroecological areas. So in recent time, you realize that the number of rains that farmers expect within a season has reduced drastically. And not a reduction, but also the pattern. Now, farmers cannot predict when the rains are coming. And when the rains come this week, they can't tell whether next week they should expect rain or next 2 weeks, so that they will either decide to apply a fertilizer or not. So all those things are factors that are impacting on our productivity. Now, these factors are playing a major role because we depend so much on external inputs.
Right.
Because without fertilizer, we are sitting there. So sometimes I sit down and wonder, why should war in Ukraine has impact in Ghanaian agriculture sector? When we have more resources, we have more fertile land, we have the labor to produce than those countries. It is because we've not put in internal measures to ensure that we are self-dependent in what we produce.
Okay.
We depend on these countries for seeds. We depend on them for agrochemicals. We depend on them for fertilizer. So I'm very happy that for the past few months, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture have started to think internally, and they begin to actually listen to stakeholders. This issue of organic fertilizer is something that we have been advocating for years. And I'm very happy that at least we were called, we had a stakeholder conversation. The minister did indicate and even encourage us to let farmers go in to consume the organic fertilizer. Now, if you consume organic fertilizer, it plays three major things. One, we are creating jobs for our own people, because most of the organic fertilizer companies are located in Ghana. So once you are producing here, you need more hands to help in production. So we are actually boosting our domestic agro industry. Two, we are also sustaining our soils and ensuring that we are eating healthy food, because organic fertilizer contains less chemicals. It has little impact on the water bodies, on the environment and the biodiversity. So we are still maintaining our biodiversity. Three, and that's the most important for the farmer, cost of production. Now, when I did a crop budget for maize for 1 acre, I'm getting around 3,700 to produce.
1 acre?
Yes, to produce 1 acre of maize farm.
Okay, and 1 acre of maize will feed about how many people? That's the only way I can understand it.
Okay, so 1 acre of maize, depending on the practices that you are doing, you can get 30 bags of 100 kg for 1 acre.
Okay.
You understand?
Yes.
Now, so if you don't do the practices well, then it reduces to 20 or less. Now, if you use, that is, if you use chemical fertilizer to produce, if you choose to go the organic way, because per the organic companies that I had conversation with, to apply organic fertilizer on 1 acre, you need around 100 and 150 Ghana cedis. If you go the chemical way, 1 bag of NPK is going for 400 Ghana cedis.
What is NPK?
It's a nitrogenous fertilizer that we always use for the first application first.
Okay.
So if you want to use a heavy feeder maize like Pioneer, you need 3 bags of NPK and then 1 bag of urea. And a bag of NPK is going around 400 Ghana cedis. Urea is going around 450 Ghana cedis. So 4 times 4, that's 1,600.
I see.
Plus another 450, 2,050.
Oh.
But if you, so that's 2,050 Ghana cedis.
Out of the 3,000?
Yes, for fertilizer alone.
Wow.
But if you're going organic, then you need around just 100 Ghana cedis.
Are you serious, Dr.
Yes.
Nyaba? Okay.
So that's what the organic can do.
Okay.
So we think that is a call in the right direction by the minister that we should focus on doing the organic. And I'm also happy that they are promoting the organic by way of subsidizing it for farmers to be able to afford.
Okay.
One other area that we need to look more closely and then put our eye on. You know, Accra Compost has been doing compost over the years, but we started actually consuming it and taking it to the other regions. But the plant is located in Accra, and compost is very heavy. So before you load compost from Accra to the other regions, the cost of transporting alone would even be more than the cost of the product. So it's making it difficult for farmers to be able to actually take. And Accra Compost is also playing a double role by reducing the waste in the urban areas and using the waste to also produce manure that the farmers can use. So I think that what Accra Compost need to start thinking is about establishing production plants in all the regions, in order that we don't need to all, like if you're in the Upper East region, you don't need to load the compost from Accra to Upper East region. When in Upper East region, they also generate waste that we can also gather and use
over
that.
there.
Once we do that, the compost plants alone are creating jobs by people working there, people going around to gather the waste and what have you. That's one area. And then it's also promoting the soil health, because if you look at the way compost work, it's different from both the refined fertilizer, either it's organic or inorganic. Compost try to improve on the soil structure and at the same time providing nutrients for the plants. So once you continue to do that, you are reducing your own waste creating jobs and ensuring that we are increasing our food production. So that if you depend on that, and there is even external factors like Ukraine and Russia, I think other countries should depend on us.
Right. I thank you for helping us understand this. I will go to Dr. Duahine, but when I come back to you, I would want a very straightforward answer, especially in your position as the Executive Director for Peasants Farmers Association, that today, I can only be human and I can only think about my stomach today. Today, do we have food? I want to think about today before I think about tomorrow. Okay. Do we have food? Are we secured in terms of food today? But Mr. Duahine, hi. As an economist, I want to understand, considering today's inflation, okay, and all what Dr. Nyaba has said, if we do not go their direction, what will be the predictions, say, in the next 1 year or two? How would inflation look, considering what the point we are today?
Yes, so from where I sit, if you look at the inflation basket element that goes into inflation, you realize that food is one of the major contributors to the inflation variable in Ghana. So if we do not look internally to look for sources of some of these fertilizers to boost food production, I expect that in the next 1 year, we should be heading towards inflation around, estimated to be around 35%, right? Because once you have food shortage with many mouths to feed, that is many people to feed, and supply is low, then you tend to have a very high level of inflation because it creates shortage between demand and supply, and you are likely to have more prices increasing rapidly, and then inflation likely to go up. Okay. So if we don't do anything about it, in the next 1 year, we should expect inflation to be around 35% or maybe 40%.
Okay, and do you agree to some of the recommendations from Dr. Nyaba?
I strongly agree, because if you look at sources of fertilizer, and if we tend to depend on external sources, I mean, and some of these distractions, even in the period of COVID, supply chain distractions tend to have an impact on agricultural productivity. And with this Ukraine war, if you look at the amount of fertilizer we import from Russia and all these places, and we do not go domestic way of producing some of these fertilizer, we will have a big problem to solve in the next few years. Okay. And the good thing is that most of these domestic organic fertilizer can be produced in our homes, right? Most of the things we use in the home, they can be segregated, put in. We can even make use of car tires, put some of these items we use, food leftovers and those things, put them in it, put a little bit of sand on it, and we are likely to generate some of these compost we are looking for. But in terms of commercial quantities, like you said, we need to be looking at setting up some of these industries in places where agriculture is the main activity. If you look at the northern sector, if you look at the northern part of Ghana, where in transporting some of this compost fertilizer there is quite expensive, and we tend to probably put some of these factories there. It will make things quite cheaper for them to buy them in commercial quantities and use them for food production. So I strongly agree with him that we need to go the domestic way, making use of the organic fertilizer, which will have a very big impact on agricultural productivity.
Okay, okay, thank you. Dr. Nyaba, I'm sure by now somebody is watching. Do we have food?
Yeah, and that's a very interesting question. And I'm always being very careful in handling questions like that because you remember some 3 months ago, I made a statement that Ghanaians should buy food and stock. Yes. And then I got buzzing from the ministry that I was causing a fear and panic. Wow. Because at the time, I realized that the farmers I was dealing with taking their supply, I realized that most of them actually had less than half what they got previous years. So day in and out, we've been taking data from our farmers, not academic data like Duahine and his colleagues would have done, but we are able to also predict what the future will look like. If you ask me today whether we have food, It depends on the food that we talk about. And I always want to do this classification.
Okay.
If you look at what we produce, we have cereals like maize, soya beans, and then sorghum, millet, and then rice, which is both used for domestic consumption and for industry. If you look at our soya like this, about 90% goes to industry. That's the poultry sector. As we speak, there is no soya. There's a serious shortage of soya. Maize, the same thing. So the current price that we are seeing for maize and soya has to do with demand being higher than supply.
So the soya, is it because we're unable to produce enough, or is because of some of the stories we've heard that farmers hoard it and they sell it to foreigners?
I think for soya, I think greater quantity actually go for export. India and other places, they come to buy from us. Maize, every year we still have our neighboring countries come to buy. But this time we would have still had enough. But last year the yields were no good due to the previous factors that I mentioned earlier, which has to do with both the rains, a shortage of fertilizer, and then input costs. So currently, if you ask me, we don't have enough maize. It is a reason why...
And it is our staple.
Yeah. Now, if you look at our food chain, we always have a bumper season and then the lean season. Bumper season is between a period of August to somewhere December.
Okay.
By which time farmers would have harvested, they are all selling. From February till July, it's always a very critical period every year.
That's when we are using the one we've stored?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, this time around, you can see that we still have maize in the market, and prices, what we are crying, might still be stable. Next month, next 2 months, we are likely to see the price higher than that because farmers have started planting, and they are selling what they have already stored to use for planting. And those who also bought for business purposes are also releasing it in the market.
Okay.
But by July, August, that's the period when the new crops are coming in, but they are not ready, and the old stock too is depleted. So we are likely to have serious challenges with commodities like maize going forward.
Okay.
Until we hit the month of September, then the new maize will be coming to bring down the prices. Now, if you take other commodities like vegetables, let's take tomatoes, for instance. We get a lot of our tomatoes from the northern part of the country, in the Vungo area, and then in recent time also...
Why, so is it because of the weather? I've always, since I was a child,
because tomatoes, you can't do tomatoes all time.
Okay.
Yeah, especially certain variety, you can't do them during the rainy season.
Okay.
So those areas, they are not producing tomatoes. So prices are likely to continue to go up.
Okay.
Because the southern part around Adan area will be coming later part of the year.
Okay.
And that is not always adequate to be able to offset the demand.
Okay.
So we are likely to continue seeing tomato prices, those ones also going up. Yam, we are likely to, we are short of yam.
Eh?
Yes.
Okay,
because usually yam, we are not able to store yam for a very long time.
Right.
So the new yam will start coming in July and August. So if now the price of yam is already so high in Accra, 1 tuber is going around 10 cedis.
Yeah.
So it means that this price is likely to continue going up.
Now I can finish 1 tuber.
Until around August, that the new yam will start coming.
Okay.
Cassava, that I will encourage most of us to start consuming, is what maybe we are likely to also see the price coming down going into July. But usually we don't feed too much on cassava. We use it for only fufu and the rest.
Yes.
Plantain prices are already up.
So high up.
Yes, and we don't expect it to come down now. So if you put all these factors together, I think you can judge whether we have enough food or not. It shouldn't come from me. But I think that we as farmers, beginning to engage the ministry, we are putting a lot of measures in place.
Okay.
The whole of last 3 weeks, last 2 weeks, I was on the field. I was moving from field to field, encouraging the farmers to produce. Because I think those in farming and you, those who are not farming and then you want to invest, this is the time to invest in farming.
Okay.
I say that because even though prices are high, me, to be frank with you, I'm not worried so much.
Because you stored food?
I still have, no, my own farm food.
Right.
That
Where's
I
the
would
farm?
I have farm in Upper West, I have in Upper East, I have in BA. You understand? A bag of maize that I would have sold last year around 150 Ghana cedis. This year I'll sell the same thing around 350 cedis.
Oh, Dr. Nyaba.
So I remain in business. So what we are telling the farmers to do is that we are going to save the cost to the consumers unless government begin to subsidize our production.
We'll be the ones bearing the brunt.
Yes, of course, because I'm going to invest. I won't put all my money to produce. At the end of the day, I have to sell it lower than the cost of production.
I totally
it's a business to us. So we are actually encouraging the farmers, those who are already in, and the new ones who want to come on board, that this is a time to invest in agriculture.
Okay.
Now, I'm seeing the responses are really positive. I'm even being contacted by graduates, people who completed their national service, they want to go into farming. And they want me to guide them as to where to go and what commodity to produce. So if these responses continue, then it means that the number of people who go into farming are likely to increase. Those who are there and they have the capacity are likely to also expand their farm sizes. And if this happens, we are likely to see stability in going forward.
Okay.
Now, the other area that I wanted to tackle.
Okay, fortunately my time is up, but
let me just touch on that. I want us to also pick, apart from the organic, we need to consider irrigation. Because no matter the kind of input you use, you can't do it on dry land.
Okay.
And climate change is with us. So we are producing only one season. And even within that season, the rains are not stable. So we need to be thinking of how to invest in irrigation. Countries that made it through agriculture, Israel, talk of China, talk of US, talk of Brazil. Recently, our reps went to Brazil and came. If you go every kilometer, they have irrigation. So they don't really depend on the rain. So all time, they are always producing. Okay. So they are able to stabilize their food prices.
Okay, that's good to know, Dr. Nyaba. Mr. Duhini, I'll give you the final minutes. I want to understand how sustainable, if we eventually switch to the organic fertilizer, because it seems to be one of the top recommendations, even the ministry is accepting that option. How sustainable is it? Are we ready for that? Can we switch now, or we need to do it a gradual process?
I think this is the right time to do so. We have enough waste in Ghana that goes, I mean, we don't make use of them, we don't do anything to them, and they even tend to harm us by giving us a lot of sicknesses that we have to spend money on to cure. So the use of organic fertilizer, this is the right time. This is how we need to go about it, even if there are external factors which are not going to boost our agricultural production. We can depend on the local waste we make to boost agricultural production, and which is quite cost effective, quite very low. Our farmers can buy them in commercial quantity than to continue to rely on these chemical fertilizers, which may, in the long run, even give us some sicknesses from the food we use in producing. Like Dr. Charles Nyaba said, we need to look at how we can expand some of these processing plants that are used in producing the organic fertilizers. And with that, I think we are good to go. I mean,
okay. So as an economist, you would say that it's sustainable to switch to the organic fertilizers. This is economically sustainable.
Yes, sure, it's sustainable to do so. Okay. Why not? Because almost every day, tons and millions of waste products are made. Even in Accra alone, we have so much waste that we don't make use of them. Right? Okay. So, I mean, if we switch, that's the most sustainable way to go. And we're going to cut us off from depending on external sources, which are quite very expensive, even with supply chain disruptions. It tends to affect our agricultural farmers in terms of how they can access some of these fertilizers to use on their farms. So with domestic sources, it is easy to go and get access to them. The prices are also quite very cheap, and we tend to have a more quality food coming from the use of these organic fertilizers compared to relying on chemical fertilizers.
All right, thank you so much. We can never finish talking about food, so thank you for joining us here on Prime Morning. Mr. David Tado Eduhene, Development Economist, University of Ghana, Economics Department, and also special thank you to Dr. Charles Nyaba. Dr. Charles Nyaba, so I know where to get food now. Okay?
Yeah.
So you've thrown the challenge. You've thrown the challenge to us. We should do the math and then decide whether or not we have food.
Sure.
Okay. Anyway, that's good, and thank you. We'll pick up on this conversation again. I saw
you.
that you had a lot to talk about. Except our time is up, so we'll pick up on the conversation. Thank you. We've been talking to Dr. Charles Nyaba, Executive Director, Peasant Farmers Association. I'm sure you're learning and you're understanding food security now. And thank you for joining us this morning on the show this day.